Hey everyone, welcome back to the Matchnet podcast. Ooh, mm. How are you, Cathy?
I'm good. I'm a little anxious about this topic because I feel like
Mm.
I'm not a master at talking about this, but I'm excited.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a requirement for this podcast. You must be a master at everything that we talk about. You have to have mastered life and the blessing. Otherwise, what are we doing? You got to be unstoppable. If you guys are watching us on YouTube, there's a sign someone wrote on the whiteboard behind me. It says, "You're a beast, unstoppable," which is a nice thing to have on a whiteboard. I just came into this room and saw that somebody wrote it, not me. Um,
It is.
that's something I feel like Cathy would say to her clients, her personal training client. You're a beast, unstoppable. All right. So Cathy, let's see. I wanted to ask you to get on here to do a bit of a deep dive into the words of father and mother. And we came preloaded, prepared to share some of our kind of insightful words, not our insightful words, the insightful words of true parents, and then have some dialogue, some
Mhm.
real life hundoke with y'all today about the blessing and preparing for marriage and matching. Just as a reminder, because I forgot to say at the top here, this is the Matchnet podcast, right? As as it is called. And Cathy and I have done quite a few. I want to say like quite a few. I don't know how many, six or
Yeah.
seven episodes or
Yeah,
something
maybe.
together.
Hmm.
Yeah. And we just passed our 100 episode mark a few weeks ago,
Yes.
which is pretty fun. And
Uh-huh.
uh, and so now we're just going back to the basics, going back to the basics. We also have the 2025 blessing that's coming up next year in April, which is on the hearts and minds of a lot of folks, including yourself, Cathy. You have a
Hmm.
workshop that you're running coming up soon here in
Hmm.
North Carolina, actually about 15 minutes
Yeah.
from my house. So you can mention about that. I'll give it up to you in a second. And but just to back up a bit, if y'all are benefiting from this podcast, because the only reason we do it is to be helpful, really, then please consider sharing it with your team, primarily your parents, your matching supporter, whoever it is in your life that you cherish and love, so that y'all can have some give and take about the content and not just receive it, right? So,
Hmm.
Cathy, show us what you got. What's our show and tell for today?
Okay. Um, well, I was really grateful that we are kind of going back into a Hunduke style program because I think there's a lot of value in directly quoting true parents' words on the matching and the blessing. So when you asked me to prepare a Hunduke, I wanted to go a few different ways, but
Hmm.
like you said, since I'm preparing for a level 2 workshop, a lot of the people coming into a level 2 are those who are, getting ready for the matching themselves. But there's also a lot of those who are thinking about, why is this relevant to me? Why should I go to the matching? Why should I go to the blessing? What makes a blessing different than a marriage? And I really genuinely feel like you cannot answer that question without addressing lineage, because that really is the ultimate reason that a blessing is different from a regular marriage in the secular world terms. So I kind of came across this speech from True Father. So this speech is titled Change of Blood Lineage, the real experience of salvation by the Messiah. So the first paragraph that kind of caught my attention is actually this um, subparagraph here called Resurrection of Love. And I do want to read the whole thing. It's only a few paragraphs,
Yeah.
but I feel like it's hard to understand True Father with just one sentence. There's a whole context. All right, so let's go over the Hunduke, Resurrection of Love. God wanted men and women to have the feeling of love for each other. He wanted them to perfectly fulfill the purpose of creation and to experience love in a free and natural way. That is the reason why he wanted to unite with man, centering upon love. However, man took the opposite course through the fall, and the central point for connection was taken by the archangel. And as a result, the whole universe became a mass of confusion. the central point, love, which should have been connected to God, was actually bound to Satan. And the motivation for connection became the opposite to God's motivation. Therefore, in man, the standard of the conscience and the standard of the flesh are opposed to each other. People have related to each other centered upon Satan's love, not God's love. For that reason, mankind has been suffering through 6,000 biblical years up till now in order to be liberated from the bondage of Satan's love. God has been prevented from entering the inner mind of people directly to recover the necessary central point. So he has to adopt an indirect method to penetrate their conscience. In history, therefore, God sent prophets, saints, and sages, hoping that through them, fallen man would receive his love and truth. That has been the history of restoration up until now. God's providence has centered on the recovery of love, and its goal is to restore people whose conscience is indwelt by God, and it aims at unity through God's love. So that was the first topic that I wanted to talk about. And there's a lot in there, but I feel like when we're talking about matching and blessing and purpose of the blessing, oftentimes we think it's to create an ideal family, right? And then that's not a wrong answer. But the biggest part of that is that God is becoming a central part of that relationship. That what it means to become an ideal family is to be engrafted onto this vision that God had wanted for us, that is not spoiled by our connection to Satan. So this got me thinking because, I don't know if I've shared this story before, but I was out one time with a group of friends of mine who are not in any way connected to our church. They're all married, they all have children, and we were kind of going around asking questions. Just to get to know each other more. And so you would pick out a card and you would read out the topic of conversation, and you would go around answering that question. And one of the girls picked out, I believe the question was, what is one secret to a happy marriage? And this girl just said, I don't have anything to say because I'm still working on that. And this woman has been married, I want to say, for at least 11, 12 years. She has children and raising these children together with her husband. But we all went around and saying, does anyone have anything to say on this topic? Everyone except for myself and one other girl had something to offer. But most of the women said, I'm not I don't have love in my family. I don't have love with my husband. I'm not in a happy marriage. And it really hurt to hear that mind you, this was in a table of 13 women, 13 women, and not one of them are in a happy marriage. And it got me to thinking, what does it mean to have love in a family? What does it mean to have that connection with your spouse, with your children? And it's when Father talks about the perversion of love, of that disconnect from God, I really feel that this world is sorely affected by that perversion of love. That people are looking for a love, but they don't really know what that looks like. And it is such a huge pain on God's heart that we can't experience this. And so I really firmly believe that we can't talk about the value of the blessing without addressing what does that love look like? How do we get that love? And what is the Messiah, our true parents, our true father and true mother's role in giving us this kind of love? So to me, that was such a painful point to experience when I can see that this world is suffering from that. So a bigger part of me is like, do we dive into lineage? Because I feel like you can't really understand true love without understanding lineage. So I don't know if you wanted to say anything on that point, Benji, because I could keep going.
Well, it's a big conversation. So I'd love to hear what your heart says about that lineage and the difference, as you put it, between the blessing and traditional marriage, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Um, let me just talk a little bit about a couple of nights ago. And I'm not saying that this happens to in every family, but I really feel, I mean, Benji, you work with High Noon. I think you can kind of see and understand a lot of vices that people have, pornography, masturbation, and their idea of what love is like and how skewed it could be, because we live in a world that feels like they need that type of stimulation, right? And
Mm.
so a couple of nights ago, my husband and I started watching this series. And we stopped watching it because it's so heavy.
Mm.
But the series, it's based off of this murder case about two boys who unfortunately killed their parents. And I was like, oh man, that's kind of
Mhm.
crazy. I didn't expect that. But as you go through the series, I didn't finish it, so I don't know how it really ends, but it's a true story. But you can see that a lot of the reasoning behind why they killed their parents, they were wealthy, their parents had everything, they gave them everything. It wasn't for money, it was for the lack of parental love. These boys were sexually abused by their parents. They then did that to each other, and it just ran from the father's mother, from the mother's father, or uncle. Like
Mhm.
this was just something that was passed on generation to generation to generation. And I really think we don't realize how influenced we are spiritually in our own lineage enough. I don't think we really stop and think about how much our ancestors have a role in this, and that God's reason for sending someone to cleanse this world of that is so important, but we just don't really realize it enough until we understand and do a deep dive into ourselves and our habits and how we think and how we act. um so when it comes down to love, this true love that God had wanted to give to us, I feel was a true parental love, and that we could not attain because it was perverted. It was taken over by a selfish way of looking at what love is. We can see that through, Benji, your work in High Noon. You can see that through media and Hollywood and how they are praising every form of love, but it's a selfish kind of love. It is a love that makes you feel good just about yourself, but not a love that makes you feel good about someone
Mm.
else, about wanting to live a life for someone else, about wanting to live a life for your spouse, for your children, for greater good and greater purpose, like God and your brothers and sisters in this world. Instead, it's always about me. How do I feel good? How do I feel satisfied? How do I feel fulfillment in this moment? So it becomes a very self-centered love. And
Mm.
I really think in order for us to understand how to attain that, we have to kind of understand lineage. And when I'm thinking about the matching and the blessing and what makes the blessing valuable, I think about four different points. And I've actually heard about this point from an old pastor of mine. And he actually created a presentation that was for the purpose of educating his own children. His own children were growing up and they were deciding as to whether or not they wanted to get blessed or not. Some had girlfriends, some had wanted to marry outside, and some had, or some had questions. So he really spent over a year perfecting this presentation. And he came up with four different points about what makes a blessing different.
Mm.
And those 4 points, I'm just going to read them. I'm not going to go into a whole presentation because that could take hours. So the first point that he came about was just that I also wanted to mention that these 4 points go increasingly more difficult in understanding because they become increasingly spiritual,
Mm.
but nonetheless important. So the first point about why you should get blessed is you have membership in a community, right? We are when we are either when we meet this movement or when we are born into this movement, you are part of this community of blessed families. And this community is unlike really any community that I know that I'm part of. You know, it's amazing that if I could be in Korea, I could be in Japan, I could be anywhere, but if I meet a blessed family, I meet another blessed couple, I meet another BC, I meet someone that, you know, understands their faith, there is a certain you know, connection that you have that immediately puts you into, it's more than friendship, it's really familial, and it's a beautiful community to be a part of. And oftentimes when we think about, you know, our own friends and why we go to workshops, why we do certain things, it's because we love being a part of this community. So that is the first benefit from going to the matching and blessing, is that you become a member of this Unification Church community.
Mm.
Secondly, um, and it's probably a really big one, it's you gain a shared commitment to a philosophy and a way of life. And when we talk about, you know, your future spouse, and you're thinking about who you want to marry, oftentimes, in order to have a successful marriage, you would find someone that has similar values and faith as you, because that is going to be a bedrock for how you operate your family moving forward. So this is actually a super important point, because I have few months ago, I've done a poll. I don't know if some of you are on this Facebook group, if you're on Facebook still, but there's a Facebook called what is it? Unification Church Parents or something like that.
Mm.
Anyway, it's a group for unification parents, unificationist parents, to kind of talk about how to raise your family in our tradition. And I was preparing for a presentation to bring to our pastors meeting, and I was going to talk about BFM and blessing and family. And I asked them two questions. I asked this group two questions, and the first question was, why is the blessing important in your life? And the second one is, why is it so difficult for our younger generation now to want to go the way of the matching and blessing? Like, what is it so difficult for them? And I got a lot of answers, but the one recurring reason that many gave me when they answered the first question about why they chose to go the way of the matching and blessing is because they wanted to have someone with the similar faith and value system that they grew up in. So that was the one of the most important things to these couples. Um, and then thirdly,
Okay.
almost there,
Yeah.
is that
No,
you
please
gain
go. This is really great fuel, and
Okay, I'm sorry.
gears
Just yeah,
are
let me
turning
know.
for everyone. So please go.
Okay, yeah, let me know if it's too much, and I can answer questions.
Yeah.
The third point about why I should be blessed, or why you should be blessed, is that you, and again, it becomes increasingly spiritual, right? You gain a spiritual credential. So what that means is, when you come in front of God and Satan, both of these entities recognize you as someone that is owned and loved by our heavenly parent, that you do not belong to Satan, that you belong to God. And both God and Satan recognizes that. And that is a spiritual credential that comes with a heavenly weight, because that is what our true father and true mother have gone through in their whole life of suffering and pain, and, you know, all those things, a lot of things that they've done that we can't really fathom, to give to us, is that we are recognized as a heavenly son or daughter by both God and Satan. And then lastly, you get a restored lineage for God. And that those are the 4 points. So that membership of community, a shared commitment to philosophy and a way of life, that spiritual credential that you will carry with you. If you guys remember the Chunnelgo cards, I still have mine somewhere, but it's
Hmm.
kind of like that. But it's a spiritual recognition, and then you have that restored lineage that you can offer to your future generation, so that all of these things that we see in movies that are actually happening in real life about sexual abuse, alcohol abuse, drug, all of those things that we are hoping to clean up, those are real things that are being passed down from generation to generation. And it's all because it's seeking this love that we don't know what it looks like until we receive this love from heavenly parent and true parents.
Hmm.
So that in a nutshell is why I feel it's so important to talk about lineage when it comes to understanding the meaning of the matching and blessing.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna stop there for a second. I don't know if you had
Okay.
any questions you wanted to talk about, Benji.
There's a lot to unravel there. I'm really connecting with certain things that you've mentioned, but I want to kind of go into that a bit after you're done with the fourth point.
With the lineage part. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so with again, Ryan and Benji, you said we don't have to be experts, right? But I'm really trying to understand lineage and how it pertains to us. And I'm gonna be honest, sometimes I flip-flop on this because right, we're seeing a lot of confusion and understanding of what lineage means, what does it look like. But I really feel that it's something we kind of have to address. And the more I talk to other people outside of unificationism, actually, the more I talk to Christians, the
Mm.
more questions that I have and the more solid I become in our understanding of what lineage is. Um, so just to kind of paint a little picture, a couple of weeks ago, I was scrolling through my Instagram, and a lot of my Instagram content that I follow are Christian accounts. They have, great content about relationship and, God-centered marriage and things like that, things that I'm interested in. And
Mhm.
and a lot of Christians have this viewpoint about faith versus works, right? That in order to be saved, what they call salvation, you just need to believe, right? You just need to believe and accept God as your Jesus as your savior. Some people believe that Jesus and God are the same thing. Anyway, that's a whole other topic. But um, so yeah, okay, I do actually do this quite often. I go and comment and I try to have a dialogue with these people. And I don't mean to, I'm genuinely curious. I'm genuinely curious about what they're gonna say about the topic of salvation and faith. So then I asked them, I'm like, okay, well, if all you need to do to be saved is believe in Jesus and accept him in your heart, then you will be saved. Why is it that every time that a new child is born into your family, that this child also needs to go through the way of baptism and having to redo that whole process all over again? Like, why is that a recurring thing? And
Mhm.
then this woman responds back saying, well, I mean, I don't believe in the baptism of babies. I believe that baptism has to be a choice that you make when you're an adult. Now that you give your life to God and then that you accept God into your heart, like this type of thing. Um, so so then I kind of pressed her a little bit on that because I'm still genuinely curious. I'm not just trying to argue online. I'm not trying to be a troll, but I'm genuinely curious about what she means by that. So I'm saying, so you're saying you need salvation, you need faith, you just to believe, but what about babies who unfortunately, pass on to the spirit world early? If they were born premature, or if they, some unfortunate circumstance happens, what happens to those poor babies? Are they not saved? Are they not welcomed into Heavenly Father's arms when they die? And she honestly couldn't answer that question. To be honest, she kind of gave me a runaround, and she was just saying, well, they haven't committed any sin, so they should be okay. Like, okay, so that, but you said all you need to do is faith, so now it's to believe. So, but these babies couldn't believe, but they were not, they didn't have much personal sin. So she's kind of like flip flopping back and forth. So when I'm seeing there's so much confusion about lineage and that we are kind of clear on what that means, that lineage and salvation is tied into something that is spiritual. It kind of makes a little bit more sense because when True Father talks about right engrafting onto the true olive tree, And he's saying that this is something that will cleanse your lineage, that it's only done one time. You engraft onto my lineage and you maintain this lineage. You don't have to keep doing the baptisms. You don't have to do it again and again and again. This is you engrafting into my lineage, and it will clean your whole lineage. It's not like the Catholics where you go and ask for salvation, you're forgiven just because you believe. Like this is the real deal. It's a one and done thing. So the more I kind of understand it from the eyes of those who are looking in, different faiths, different perspectives, I become more rooted and convicted in what true parents are trying to say about lineage. Um, so I kind
Yeah.
of do have a few Hunuke points. I don't know if you wanted me to do that now, Benji,
You have
or we could talk
you
a
have
bit
more
about it.
readings. Is it a different speech?
It was the same speech, but it's just
Okay.
talking about lineage. But
Yeah.
we can digest and we can talk about it. I can do whatever you want.
Yeah, I need to interlude here. I have also prepared content from Mother, so we can look forward to that. But I do want to hear do want to hear the rest of Father's speech from you, Cathy. My feeling right now is that I think what's calling my heart is realizing that the reason that it's really hard to understand lineage is because people are trying to intellectualize spirituality, which
Hmm.
is impossible. It's trying to understand the 0.0001% of the universe that is just matter.
Mhm.
And the rest of it is just God. It's like infinity and beyond of just like nothing, right?
Right.
I mean, I know I say nothing, and it's kind of a misnomer because nothing is something, but it's also
Yeah.
nothing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I know how abstract that sounds, but it's a classic example of trying to intellectualize something that you probably can't really intellectualize because of those 4 points that you mentioned, right? The first two, actually, anyone can experience in any faith,
Right.
which is why the other ones are important because there are spiritual ramifications and spiritual implications of the blessing that you can't just logic our ways through it. And I think we're trying to logic our ways through our minds alone and say, oh, well, what are the benefits for this? It's like, this is what I say to my kids and to magic candidates. It's just like you'll never get the blessing until you truly have a spiritual understanding of it, period.
Yeah.
Like you can't logic your way through this. You have to have a heartfelt relationship with God and with true parents. Otherwise,
Mhm.
it literally is just like every other marriage. You can go to Islam, you can go to the Mormons, and you can experience those first two things, right?
Mhm.
Uh, Shared vision, shared faith, and you can have a
Mhm.
community of people worldwide that you can connect with,
Mhm.
which is why the other points are more important, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so I understand the need to intellectualize things and linearly pick ourselves through it logically because it helps us to kind of maybe put a foot in the door. But at the end of the day, before we're blessed and through our blessing, we have to be able to put down our physical eyes and take up our spiritual eyes and try to see things with curiosity, you
Yeah.
know? And I mentioned
That's
this a
right.
bit about my relationship with Mother has drastically changed when I realized that I was being egotistical in my just trying to see her and things from like just a really quick example. I always had this like this belief that Mother should, you know, get Instagram or something, right? Which sounds so stupid to think about now, but I was like dead set on this, like Mother should get Instagram. And I know it's a really like silly example, but we do this perpetually in mass and small scale. Is thinking like, oh, Mother should do this, Father should have done this,
Mm.
right? Or the movement should be this way, it should look this way. And all I can say is like, how do you know? How do I know? First of all, she's an 80-year-old woman from North Korea. Why would she have an Instagram? Like that's 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 ludicrous. Like me, just Benji thinking. And then I was like, you know what? Maybe there's something Mother is talking about, or there's some spiritual implications of her role and Father's role that I'm not seeing. And that's the first
Mm.
step of faith. It's like maybe I don't know. Maybe I don't know the vastness of spirit world as well as I
Mm.
do think. I think I know. And so that's like been the lesson for me over the last year actually has been to when I see Mother, you know, has a speech or is coming to America. We were both there in Vegas, right? My first thought is like, oh, let me like I want to hear this now. Before it was like, oh, there's another thing, from the church. But now I'm like curious because my eyes have been slightly opened.
Mhm.
Slightly open. I was about to make a racist Asian person joke, but I'm not going to do that. Um, but you get my point. It's my eyes are slightly opened a little more, and I feel that when you were speaking, like you were talking about one thing that moved me was you were talking about the pain that you're noticing in people's lives. It's just a lack of genuine God's love, and I think that's how mother feels a lot. Like when we hear mother speak, she's always talking about the pain of the world, of God and God's
Mhm.
heart, and it's something that I've personally like not I don't know if I'm a psychopath or just lack empathy, but I don't I guess there's like two sides of God's heart, right? And maybe you could call it the masculine side of God's heart, but I
Mhm.
feel like God is also, let's say this, God is a very sorrowful God, but God is also a very patient and loving God, you know?
Yeah.
Like your child makes a mistake, yeah, you'll be sad a little bit, but also you'll be like, you laugh it off and you say, get up and try again. There's a kind of patience and kind of an unconditional belief. Like, I believe in my children, I believe in humanity. And even
Mhm.
though they make mistakes, I'm patient and I'm going to be with them side by side. I'm not going to just give up hope and wail in my own pity and sorrow. Like some parents
Right.
do that, but God doesn't do that. Maybe a
Right.
little, it's anyways, maybe a little bit, but God is not just like feeling sorry all the time for how
Yeah.
degenerate his children are. God is like, yeah, like you made a mistake, get up, keep going. Like we'll be okay. We'll get through this. Like that's what a good parent would say. Like we'll get through this.
Mhm.
So I'm saying that because I think it's important to relate with both sides of God's heart, like that really sorrowful, like how painful humanity is, but also the hopeful, enjoyable parent's heart that just like looks at a child fall on his face and laughs his face off, you know, and and just says, all right, like get up and keep going. Yeah.
I think we talked about this actually in Vegas, and
Mm.
and I think you were saying something along that point of that you don't believe God is just a sorrowful God,
Mm.
that we're looking at our own parenting, and there's just no way we can continue to create a family, a happy family, if we're always wallowing in pity when our kids make mistakes. And I think that's what's beautiful about understanding God's process of restoration, is that we see his strength and his conviction and correcting all the mistakes of the past, and just trying to always find a way. Yeah, so I think you're absolutely right. I think we
Yeah.
forget that God is a God of hope and strength, and making sure
Yeah.
everything still works out.
And action. God
That's
takes
right.
action. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't not believe that God is sorrowful. I 100% believe that, right? I mean, just look at mother speak. Like when she starts talking about God,
Yeah.
mm, she
Yeah.
like clockwork, she'll start crying. She'll start
Mhm.
crying. And that's the thing though. Like tears don't lie. The body doesn't
Mhm.
lie. And when I see mother crying like that, I'm like, yeah, like she really feels for God. And father
Yeah.
father did too. Like father really felt for God a lot. And
Mhm.
that is what I believe moves them beyond anything else. Like
Mhm.
there's no personal, I don't feel any personal incentive for mother to
No,
be doing what she's doing.
right.
Like think of the typical Korean woman, especially someone a Korean woman that's 80 years old and from North Korea. You think that the path that she's on, the things she does day to day, the tours she's doing, and her health is not great. Like that's not the life that a Korean woman would personally want to take. It's
Yeah.
like, but it's that relationship with God, it's that feeling for God's heart that drives her to do that. And I think that's the same heart that should drive us to the blessing and to
Mhm.
lineage. It's like, I do this because I love God, you know? Like
Mhm.
that's what we should be feeling when we get blessed. Like I love God so much. I love my parents, these two parents so much that I'm going to do this. And
Mhm.
it's the opposite of a fear-based motive, which is like I'm afraid of disappointment, I'm afraid of failure, I'm afraid of not being enough, of being unworthy. And that's a driving factor. But it's not like I just love so much. Right.
Mhm.
And so when we're talking about lineage, and understanding lineage, I think that we need to get to a point where like I really, really feel close to God, and I want to do this for that reason. Um, mm,
Yeah.
all right. So I think our listeners are curious to know what else Father says about lineage here.
I I don't want to take up all the time though, Benji, because we do have your 100K reading too. So just let me know.
It's okay. Mother
Um,
is a woman of few words, as we know.
she is very short and sweet,
This
right?
is like this is like how all the rallies were. It's like father's talking the whole time, and then mother's just waiting patiently to have her word. You know.
Yeah, that's right. Um, okay, well, I am just gonna have to find, it may take me a little bit. I need to find
Yeah.
my spot in the 100K.
Go for it.
Uh,
And I'll sing a song.
yeah, please.
Amazing grace. No.
Hey, you've got a voice.
Everything is awesome. I love singing. People don't know this about me. I really do. I do it every day,
Really?
all the time. Like guitar, piano, ukulele. It's like my hidden passion. This music.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Well, I do need someone to lead some songs at the workshop in a couple of weeks.
Oh word. We'll see. Depending
Okay.
how I'm feeling. Go ahead. Find the thing. Music is a feel. Like you gotta feel it. You can't force music. Like you
That's
really.
true. Yes, that's
Mhm.
true. I mean, holy songs have a way of getting you, at least me, I don't know. Some people don't like holy songs, but I love holy
Mm.
songs. Um, okay. I don't know. Oh, here it is. Okay.
Everything is awesome.
Um,
Everything is cool.
this, okay, well,
Everything is awesome.
all right. I mean, it's not anything deep, but I think it's just a nice way to wrap up. Let me share. Okay. All right. So basically, just to wrap up my idea of meaning of the blessing and the meaning of change of lineage and what that requires of us and what that looks like. I wanted to kind of go back to this speech. And here, those of us who stand on the foundation of restoration are required to go forward to fulfill the purpose of the world. In the days ahead, you must experience God's feelings and the heart which God had before creation. You should go forward with gratitude towards the fulfillment of the purpose of creation. And although you may suffer, the suffering is not just for its own sake. You'll receive more blessings, which are accumulated secretly in heaven by going the way of suffering, and therefore be grateful. Husband and wife, united with hearts of love, must establish their family beyond any levels of the past, dedicated towards the goal for the future. Otherwise, you cannot enter the eternal kingdom of heaven where God dwells. That is the ultimate goal and God's purpose of creation. It sounds like a dream, but it is attainable. Therefore, you must promise me that you will go towards the goal of the ideal family. And asking everyone, if you want to become like that, raise both your hands and pledge. So just that just reminds me of what you were talking about, Benji, because Father wants us to think about gratitude, to go forward with a heart of wanting to experience this love that God had in the beginning. This, yes, there is that pain, that sorrow, but we want to move forward because we want to have that peace. We want to have that unity amongst our families. We want to have that love. And there's really nothing we need to do more because true parents have already done all the work. They're the ones that have gone through the pain and the suffering. They're not asking that of us. We just need to receive that blessing and create the happiness and love that they want for ourselves. And a lot of people are saying, how can I prepare to receive this blessing? Or what do I need to do to attain this change of lineage or whatever? but
Mm,
there's nothing you can do. The blessing is, that's what it is. It's a gift.
mm,
You just have to accept it in your heart and understand it and move forward and create beautiful families with it. And
mm,
so, but I think, like you said, it's going to require a level of faith. It's going to require you not having to think so logistically about everything, and to just really understand and have faith that this is the path to happiness and peace
mm,
and love. So yeah, so
mm.
that's kind of how I just wanted to end that.
Yeah, thank you. That's very interesting. Yeah. I mean, father and mother have both demonstrated the heart to give the blessing to everyone. Mother
Mhm.
said it so many times, 8 billion people, right? And so it really begs the question of like, and I've kind of changed my view on this slightly. Because I was always the guy that's like, if you're not ready for the blessing, don't get blessed. Like, if you don't want to get blessed, don't get blessed. Maybe it's not for you, right? I do stand by that as a like an older brother's recommendation, not like a
Right.
I'm the gatekeeper of the blessing and I'm right. It's like as an older brother, this is my recommendation based on my experience. That's how I
Mhm.
put it. Like maybe you should get blessed later, maybe in a year or a few years when you understand a little bit. But on the other hand, like mother and father are very clear about wanting to bless people that like obviously don't have the foundation. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And I'm not talking about, just people in our faith or outside our faith or whatever. It's like they've demonstrated many times that people are not up to par, up to standard, up to understanding the fullness of the blessing, the gravity of it. And so the area in which my view on this personally has changed is that I think there is merit to well, there's definitely more merit to having people really grasp it before they start their blessed life, because
Yeah.
then they will start to gravitate towards understanding it better and deeper, as opposed to
Mhm.
opposing it, which we've talked about happens as people get blessed with a certain level of understanding, and then they actually distance themselves from the blessing over time,
Right.
right? Or divorce, or say like, oh, this blessing was wrong, it's a sham, I don't believe this
Yeah.
anymore. It happens, right? And
Mhm.
so it makes sense that the stronger people have a conviction, and at least to a degree, then over time they will deepen their understanding. And
Mhm.
both parties, both partners will help each other and support each other to deepen our understanding of God, your parents, the blessing, and all that. Spirit will. Uh, so that's the best case scenario. However, I do think there is merit to people really not having any understanding of it and receiving it, probably as you're saying, because it is a gift. And also there are spiritual elements at play that maybe I don't understand. For
Mhm.
example, maybe if somebody receives a blessing and maybe they don't take it very seriously, but maybe their children or their grandchildren or their great grandchildren as a condition will be able to receive the blessing, but not only receive it, but share it with many people
Mhm.
on that
Mhm.
foundation. We don't know. So if
Mhm.
we're thinking spiritually speaking, maybe there are implications that we're not seeing that it does benefit them in tremendous ways.
Mhm.
But also
Mhm.
long-term speaking, lineage wise, maybe there is a condition that's being set for future generations to get blessed. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's fantastic. And that's probably, what father and mother are, if I were to speculate, are thinking. It's more
Mhm.
long-term. And they're thinking, like as a parent would want to just bless all the children. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I think, I mean, from my understanding is, I mean, I think you should have some form of understanding of the blessing, but there's nothing you really, for example, a lot of people don't feel worthy to receive the blessing, that they still
Mm,
have a lot of cleansing and self-work and self-healing before they can even think about it. But I really feel that the blessing has a way to actually cleanse you in the process. The more you connect to its meaning and its purpose and value for you. And less and I but and also we got to remember that just because you're blessed, it's not a guarantee that you will have an ideal family, right? Just like
mm,
how if you get a driver's license, if there's it's not a guarantee that you will never get into a car crash, right? There's a lot of families who are blessed, who still struggle, who still have a lot of things to work on, but it's a spiritual merit, and it can be something beautiful if you apply it and our and the teachings of unconditional love and harmony and peace and all those things and sacrificial love, whatever. So again, it's still up to you. There is still some work to do on your part because it is a blessing, it's a spiritual merit, but how that comes about is through your own personal actions and you taking responsibility. Um, so yeah, so I did want to make sure that
Yeah.
I throw that out there.
Gotcha. Well, let's read from Mother. And since for time, we're not going to go maybe too deep into it, but I want everyone to kind of receive what Mother's saying. And then next time we will go deeper into having some give and take on Mother's words. Okay, let's see. Before we do that, the phrase that I have written down when people ask me what's the difference between the blessing and a traditional marriage, or what's the purpose of the blessing, I written it down, so I'll read it. The purpose of the blessing is to experience God's love at the deepest level intended by God through the union of men and women and children, through the spiritual connection of true parents. And I use this wording, deepest level intended by God, purposefully, because it's not that you can't experience God throughout, without getting blessed, but the degree to which you can experience God's love through a man and woman, right? Practicing the blessing, practicing this God's love we're talking about, and through the spiritual connection to true parents is something that doesn't exist throughout history. And yeah, there's a lot to unpack in that sentence, but that's how I describe it to folks. And then Mother says, let me grab this up. She says, I don't know if you welcome this day with a deep gratitude, but I can tell you that heaven has waited for this day for 6,000 years. Sorry, let me back up again. Let's edit that out. This speech was from 2015 that she gave at the Cosmic Blessing in 2015. All right. Mother says, I don't know if you welcome this day with deep gratitude, but I can tell you that heaven has waited for this day for 6,000 years. Heaven's providential course, the providential history of restoration through indemnity, which has guided human history, is, in a word, tragic. Our Heavenly Parent went through many hardships to find one central point at which to wait. Here, he longed for the advancement of the providence. Yet, because of the repeated mistakes made by humankind, heaven had to wait countless years to find this point. However, in 1960, a new morning dawned. The true parents, the first and last of their kind to appear in human history, finally began their course of guiding the providential history. Heaven gave humankind many religions in order to enlighten humankind who had fallen into ignorance after the human fall. However, there were limitations to this way of enlightenment. Ignorance of the root of the fall limited religions from resolving the difficult problems of the world. God went through many pains in order to raise the people of Israel, through whom he tried to complete the providence of restoration through indemnity. God sent his only begotten Son. However, this Son never received the chance to shine. Our Heavenly Parent God went through nonstop excruciating pain. His heart was constantly being torn into pieces. God sent his only begotten Son to the people whom he raised for 4,000 years. This position remained. Jesus promised to return. That was the start of the 2,000-year providential history of Christianity. Then, must the returning Lord come on the clouds? Ignorant people, even after the enlightenment of the 20th century, believed that the Lord would return on the clouds. They were unable to conceive of a Messiah who would come in the flesh to carry out the dispensation of salvation. That has been the 50-year history of the unification movement. I said that today was a good day, so I won't want to speak of hardships. I will say we must reveal the truth. Looking at the world today, have you thought, who is the owner of the world? There is no owner. Is it the democratic world? Is it the communist world? Are the prosperous nations the owners of this world? No. The true owner must appear. The true owner is the one who perfects God's providential history. That person is the true parent. You know this, right? In the book of Romans, there is a parable about the wild olive tree and true olive tree. When people read this passage, they do not understand the underlying concept God is trying to express in these verses. A wild olive tree cannot become a true olive tree on its own. When the owner comes in, when the owner comes, it can then engraft itself to the owner, the true olive tree. However, this process of engrafting is not easy. The true olive tree has a responsibility. Its roots must be planted deeply so that it can survive in any difficult circumstances. What does this mean? After enduring many difficulties, you were able to receive the marriage blessing from true parents. Then, as a blessed family, what should you do? The marriage blessing will hold no meaning if you allow your blessing to extend only to your family while living in this age of true parents. Do you understand? Blessed families must fulfill their responsibility. The marriage blessing should not remain within or end up as a blessing that extends only to your family. You must reveal to your neighbors, your tribe, and your nation that your parents are their true owners. That is the only way for you to go today if you want to receive the crown of glory. The only way to prove that you lived in this era with true parents. Please engrave this into your hearts. All the blessed families gathered here today, and also those participating via internet throughout the world, should proclaim true parents to all four corners of the world and fulfill their responsibilities as tribal messiahs, practicing true love according to true parents' teachings. Humankind is suffering and dying amidst the destructive force of religion, race, and national borders that is afflicting tragedies upon the world today. Can you gaze upon them without doing anything? We must educate everyone and raise them up as true parents' children. That is the only way to go in order to bring about one unified world that we, heaven, and all humankind have longed for. I sincerely ask that you engrave these goals in your hearts and do your best. Okay. Yes. Any thoughts, comments, feelings?
I mean, I feel like that just summarizes true mother's heart and her earnest desire for all of us to receive the blessing. It's really to, yeah, establish that ideal family. I think she really resonates with God's vision prior to the fall, and you can feel that in her words.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to read in between the lines in those words, but it's a good place to conclude. And we'll have more conversations like this to come for all of y'all on the podcast. All right. So, thanks for being here, Cathy, and everyone.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.